Every African knows this man. He is the most famous African president that ever lived. He spent 67 years of his life fighting for the rights of his people. He holds the record for the longest imprisonment among African independence heroes. The story starts with this little boy. His name is Nelson Mandela, and he grew to become one of the greatest freedom fighters in history. Nelson was born in South Africa in 1918 and was raised by a local chief after his father died. But Nelson started nursing a desire to help his people. So instead of becoming a traditional chief like everyone expected him to be, he went to school and studied to become a lawyer. Now back then, something terrible was happening in South Africa. South Africa was ruled by a system called apartheid, where the white minority government separated people by race and gave white people most of the power and opportunities. Black South Africans were not allowed to go everywhere. They had to use separate bathrooms, separate buses, separate schools, and even separate churches. Everything was divided by skin color, with white people getting all the privileges. So when Nelson finished law school, he did something no other lawyer had the courage to do. He opened the first black law firm in South Africa with his friend Oliver Tambo to help black South Africans who were treated unfairly by apartheid laws. In 1944, Mandela joined the African National Congress to fight against apartheid. At first, he believed in peaceful protest, but after the Sharperville massacre in 1960, when police killed unarmed protesters, Mandela decided to take stronger action. He helped form the armed group of the ANC to sabotage government property. But he was arrested in 1962 and tried in court, where he said he was prepared to die for a free South Africa. Luckily, instead of death, he got sentenced to life in prison. For 27 years, Mandela was locked away to suffer. His son even died while he was still in prison, and he never got to see him again. The government tried to offer him freedom, but if only he would give up the fight, which he always refused. He said, only free men can negotiate. Over time, people all over the world supported him, calling for his freedom. And the South African government was under a lot of pressure and had to let him go. So finally, in 1990, Mandela was released from prison at the age of 71 after being locked away for 27 years. He was arrested at 44 and released at 71. After his release, he continued fighting for freedom because apartheid has just got to end. He worked with the last white president of South Africa to end apartheid, and both men won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1993. In 1994, South Africa finally held its first democratic election where everyone was allowed to vote, and Nelson became the country's first black president. I honestly felt like crying when I read this because this man suffered so much. As president, he preached forgiveness, unity, and peace. And in 1999, Mandela shocked the whole world by stepping down after just one term, proving that he only cared more about democracy and the people than just being in power. But here is something I actually find sad. When Mandela finally became South Africa's president in 1994, Kwame Nkrumah had already been gone for 22 years. The only time they crossed paths was in the early 1960s, when Mandela was still a young activist traveling across Africa to build support for the struggle against apartheid. It's kind of bittersweet that Nkrumah, the man who lit the torch of African independence in 1957 in Ghana, never lived long enough to see Mandela carry it further in South Africa decades later. Nelson Mandela passed away in 2013 at the age of 95. South Africa celebrates July 18th, his birthday, as Mandela Day. His story reminds us that even after years in prison, you can still walk out and change the world. History will forever remember and be kind to Nelson Mandela. God bless South Africa. And if you want to know more about Africa, then follow me right now. Ogadi, tomorrow.